Okay, so we're doing our medical ethics issue, and I thought I would like to talk about abortion today because I don't know if you follow the newspapers or the whatever it is, the reports, but this is really, really, really interesting. And I mean, I was a law professor for many years, so particularly for me, the most interesting part is maybe the less important part, and that's the leak from the Supreme Court. This is actually unparalleled. This has never happened, that a draft opinion, that when people are discussing something, a draft opinion, the whole thing, mamish gets leaked.
How does that do we know how that happened? Like what happened?
Well, what happened obviously was, but I'll give you two different interpretations of what happened. But what happened was, in all probability, a clerk who works for one of the judges leaked it, just gave it to a reporter. Now, the question is, why would they do that? So here, listen to the two explanations. One explanation is that it was a liberal clerk who was very, very upset that the Supreme Court is going to take away the right of abortion. So he or she thought, if I leak it to the press, the uproar, which it is going to be so strong that they're going to have to, change their mind.
But that's not how the court.
That's not how the court works. The truth of the matter is that's not a winning strategy. Now, there's another opinion that says exactly the opposite, because this is 5-4. 5-4. So obviously, the truth is there are 6 conservative justices on the Supreme Court. So why isn't it 6-3? Because my classmate, Chief Justice John Roberts, we know John Roberts is a conservative guy. He's my classmate. In fact, my mother always used to tell me, why don't you call him up, ask, I should go out for lunch with him or something. But anyway, I didn't know him though, but he was my classmate. But John Roberts, see, this opinion was written. I'll tell you a little Supreme Court stuff. Forgive me, it's not Torah per se. The author of this draft opinion is a guy Samuel Alito. Alito is a real conservative. So essentially, he just writes, Roe versus Wade was stupid. It never should have been. It was wrong. It was foolish. And Baruch Hashem, we're going to go back to the way things ought to be. Roberts doesn't like opinions like that because he says it causes too much machlokas. So Roberts is kind of a wishy-washy guy. So Roberts did not join this opinion, and Roberts would probably write another opinion that says, we'll go with Roe versus Wade, but we'll just, death by 1,000 cuts. We'll make little distinctions here and there. So the theory is Roberts just was trying to win over one of the 5 judges to go to him, and that would collapse Alito's opinion. So a conservative clerk may have leaked it, because once 5 judges are on record, they can't change their mind now, because it looks like they're giving in to pressure. So there's a whole kind of reverse psychology idea that this was leaked by a conservative so that the 5 who voted against Roe versus Wade could not change their mind. So I don't know. The one thing I'm pretty sure is, some people say that one of the justices leaked it. I don't think so. I really don't think so. It came from a clerk. Now, what's going to happen to this clerk? They're going to find out who did it. They're going to really investigate. So my first feeling was this clerk's legal career is over. He or she may be criminally prosecuted, but even if not,
I'm saying, that's a huge breach, isn't it?
It is a huge breach. So their legal career is over as a lawyer, and they may even be prosecuted and go to jail. It's possible. On the other hand, I thought about it again, and I said, if the public looks at this person as a big hero, they may get a big job on TV. Maybe they'll be disbarred as a lawyer, but they'll get a few $1 million as a commentator at a talk show.
Well,
so,
he is a whistleblower, right?
Huh?
Like they probably see themselves as a whistleblower.
Yeah, but a whistleblower is when you talk about something illegal. I mean, the Supreme Court has the right to adjudicate. I mean, there's nothing illegal in them deciding a case. Yeah, but they look at themselves like a whistleblower, but okay. So I thought, people want to know a lot. Again, I'm getting all sorts of questions about abortion. I've talked about it a lot of times. I probably even talked about it here. I don't remember. But just to go over briefly, Bekitzer, what the basic ideas are about abortion. The first thing to know is this. We have a difference between non-Jewish abortion and Jewish abortion. Now, first of all, understand what I mean. I don't mean non-Jewish babies versus Jewish babies. People make a lot of mistake there. I mean non-Jewish abortionists versus Jewish abortionists, meaning it makes no difference who the mother or the baby is. But the question is, who's doing the abortion? A goy or a Jew? Okay? Not who the baby is or who the mother is. Now, the issue here is that non-Jews are obligated under the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach. Right? They're called the Noachite laws. Jews are obligated by the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. Now, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, if a non-Jew commits an abortion, if a non-Jew terminates a pregnancy, the non-Jew is chayav misa, the non-Jew is guilty of the death penalty, because it is treated as murder under the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. Now, what is the proof that if a goy aborts a fetus, a goy is chayav misa? Because it says in Parshas Noach, this is a pasuk, Shofech dam ha'adam bi adam, damo yishafech. So literally that means he who spills the blood of a person within a person, his blood shall be shed, his blood shall be spilled. So note the circumlocution, note the phrase, Shofech dam ha'adam bi adam. Adam bi adam. A person in a person. What is a person in a person? Well, right? Means a fetus. So the Torah is actually telling you that under the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, a guy who kills a baby, an unborn baby, is chayav misa, death penalty.
Would it define at what point a fetus becomes a person?
Okay, so the question becomes, at what stage is this? Right? At what stage? Well, who else will apply to a Jew? But since we're talking about Noachite, let's talk about the Noachite law first. Mm-hmm. So some Shitos have a view that the Gemara says in a number of places that any embryo that is less than 40 days from conception is considered to be mere water. It does not yet have enough development to be treated as a human being. So as a result, many opinions do say abortion is permitted. Now that's not a very large window, but abortion is permitted within 40 days of conception. Now the truth is, most of the time a woman does not know she's pregnant within 40 days, but this would justify, for example, things like the morning after pill. The truth is, well, the morning after might be mature anyway, but if you hold abortion within 40 is okay, then the morning after pill would certainly be permitted. Yeah.
But if somebody keeps like this 40 days, then even without any reason, they could just do abortion? According
to some opinions, without any reason at all. Okay. It's totally permitted. Now, I do want to point out that Rav Moshe Feinstein disagreed with that, because he said that just because it's less than 40 days and it's not a full human being, there is still a potential to develop into life. So that would be sinful to terminate a potential. And I believe, I don't want to say for sure, but I believe the Rebbe himself in a letter said also that he did not accept the 40-day rationale. So the way halacha comes out lemaisa, I'll just give you a bottom line in this, is that we don't permit abortion for any reason, even less than 40 days. But if it's a rape or incest situation, even though we will not permit abortion at a later stage, but we might combine it with less than 40 days, or if, for example, there's some genetic testing, very early genetic testing, that indicates a severe abnormality, you can use the 40-day rule when you combine it with other extenuating circumstances. So you are correct that there is some discussion about how early, but I have to say, once you're after 40 days, which is pretty early, that's way before the first trimester, then halacha says that for a non-Jew to abort a fetus is treated as murder and chayiv misa. Now, for a Jew to perform an abortion is also a sin. It is a sin. It's an aveira. And the same 40-day rule would apply to a Jew as well. But, interestingly enough, it is not a capital crime. Meaning to say, if a Jew murders a born person, that's a capital crime. We don't give capital punishment today, but it is a capital crime. If a Jew, however, kills an unborn baby, it is not a chiyuv misa. It is not a capital crime. It's a sin, and it's not a chiyuv misa.
So it is a capital crime for non-Jews.
For non-Jews, it is. So that's a very curious distinction, that the severity of the crime is greater for non-Jews under the Noahide code than it is for Jews. And the proof of this is because the Torah says when people are fighting and they punch a pregnant woman in the belly and she miscarries, God forbid, so the Torah says the punishment for causing a miscarriage is financial compensation, implying that it's not a capital crime. If it would be a capital crime, that would be the punishment. It wouldn't be financial. Right? Okay. All right.
Why are we not obligated to, why is that not considered murder for Jewish people?
I didn't hear you.
Why is abortion not considered murder?
Yeah, so abortion is not considered murder because Rashi says until a child is born, it is not treated as a complete life. Now, the problem with that is, then how come it's treated as a complete life for if a non-Jew does it? I mean, it's the same baby, right? In other words, how do you look at it? If you say a fetus is a human being, then it ought to be murder for a Jew. And if you say the fetus is not a human being until it's born, then it ought not to be murder for a guy. Right? That's a very good question. That's why, people say, according to Judaism, is a fetus a human being or is a fetus not a human being? I mean, you can't even answer that question. What are you going to say? Well, if a guy does the abortion, the fetus is a human being. I mean, that doesn't make sense even as a statement. If a Jew does the abortion, the fetus is not a human being. I mean, the fetus's status as a human being should not depend on who is the one who kills it. Okay, so I'm going to leave it. It's a very excellent question. But for our purposes for now, let's just be aware of the distinction. But now, this doesn't mean, again, God forbid, do not walk out of here, and I'm sure you won't, saying, Judaism is lenient on abortion. Abortion is a very, very serious sin. It happens to be, it's not a chiyuv misa sin, but it's still a very, very serious aveira. It causes the Shekhinah to leave Klal Yisrael. We are also told it also prevents the coming of Mashiach, because Mashiach cannot come till all the neshamos have been born, and when one does an abortion, one is preventing a neshama from being born. That could actually hold back the geula from coming. Yeah.
Doesn't the Makkah Nefesh, like two men are fighting situation, doesn't that seem like it's an accident?
Yes, that's a very excellent question. Now, your question is, what's the proof that it's not a chiyuv misa? Maybe if he did it on purpose, it is a chiyuv misa. But the reason why the Makkah Nefesh is financial is because they didn't intend to hit her. She just tried to stop the fight in the middle. Very, very excellent question. But the answer is, I'm going to give you an answer, and the halacha itself you're going to say is going to be difficult. But the halacha basically is that any activity for which there would be a death penalty, if you did it on purpose, does not have financial liability even if you did it accidentally. Meaning, the fact that at least accidentally you only pay money rather than anything worse means that even on purpose you would only pay money, because if there would be a death penalty on purpose, there would be no financial liability even by accident. There would be no punishment. That's the halacha, that any capital crime does not carry financial liability even when it's done b'shogeg, inadvertently. That would mean, for example, if you shoot somebody and you kill them, you do not have to pay the cleaning bill for the blood that's on the floor, on the carpet, or whatever it is. That's a general rule that capital crimes do not carry financial liability. I mean, again, this could be extreme. I mean, the Gemara has really extreme cases. I mean, let's assume you set fire to a house and you kill somebody in the house. You don't have to pay for the burning down the house because.
That's
Pay
great.
with it for your life?
Well. So if you were warned, you would get killed. But if you weren't warned, you're not going to get killed either. So you could walk away. I mean, Hashem will punish you, but you could walk away with no punishment at all. You can walk away with no punishment at all because you did a capital crime, even though they're not going to be able to kill you because the witnesses didn't warn you or whatever it was.
Why? But why is it not considered murder? Like,
Well,
you
as
also are not allowed to murder.
No, that's true. So Rashi explains that from the perspective of Jewish law, an unborn fetus is a potential life. It is not an actual life. And therefore it's not murder yet. It's not murder, it's the destruction of a potential life that could come out. I mean, that's the idea. That's what Rashi says. But you'll see how this will turn into some very interesting practical differences. Now, let me ask you this question. You were talking about terrorists before. Let's imagine that you have, an abortion doctor, a guy that does abortions. And, some fundamentalist Christians, have waited in parking lots of hospitals, and they've actually killed these abortion doctors on the way, when they're going to the hospital, because they claim that the abortion doctor is a rodef. He's like someone who's going to murder. And you're allowed to kill a rodef to save a baby. I mean, for example, if somebody were going to kill a person, you could shoot them, right? That's the halacha of rodef. So the question would be, can you kill an abortion doctor by invoking the laws of rodef? Now, Lamaisa, I have to say, under the secular law of the United States and of Israel and most Western countries, I think all Western countries, if you killed an abortion doctor, you would go to jail or, capital punishment, whatever it would be, because abortion is legal. But let's put that aside. Don't report me. Let's imagine we were simply analyzing it halachically. Can I kill a person who is about to perform an abortion on the grounds that they are a rodef? I am protecting an innocent baby from being murdered. So, based on what we just said, you'd have a very curious distinction that I will admit does not make a lot of sense to me, but this is where it seems to come out. And that is, if the abortion doctor is Jewish, you might not be able to kill him, because since, in the eyes of Jewish law, abortion is a sin, but it's not murder, it's not a capital crime, you can only invoke rodef if somebody's a murderer. In other words, I can't kill a person to prevent him from desecrating Shabbos. Right? I can't, if somebody's going into a treif restaurant, I can't kill him to prevent him from eating treif. Rodef is a special rule that I can kill somebody to prevent him from committing murder. But if in the eyes of halacha this is not murder, then he cannot be a rodef. Masha'en kain, if he's a non-Jewish doctor, since in the eyes of the Noachide law, it is considered to be murder, then I would be able to call him a rodef. So, now this is a very, again, I am saying this is a very strange halacha. So, I have a gun, and the abortion doctor, this is a new meaning to the Shaliach's question, are you Jewish, right? a new reason to ask it, right? So, the doctor gets out of the car and says, are you Jewish? So he says, no, my work's filling already. Oh, good. No, but that'll save his life. That'll save him. He says if he's Jewish, he gets to live. If he's not Jewish, he might get killed. Now again, my instinct tells me this cannot possibly be the halacha because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But in lumdas, in theory, you could see where this might be a pshara, this might be an interesting compromise. Okay, but be it as it may, we shouldn't obscure the fact that both for Jews and for non-Jews, abortion is a sin, and we have a machlokas. Does it apply at the early stage of pre-40 days and the like? But once it's after 40 days, we do have this law of abortion, both for non-Jews and for Jews. Now, let's go further. Are there exceptions? So there's one well-known exception. And that is, it is permitted to abort if the birth of the baby or the continuation of the pregnancy is going to endanger the mother's life. That is a Mishnah, and there's no machlokas about that whatsoever, that if the continuation of the pregnancy is going to endanger the mother's life, we terminate the pregnancy. And this is even true at 9 months, no matter how far advanced the pregnancy is.
And this is the same for Jews and non-Jews.
Jews and non-Jews. The mother's life has priority. Now, here's a very, very interesting question. People say, well, that's obvious. The mother's life has priority, pikuach nefesh. The truth of the matter is, this is not at all simple. We know that if an oppressor goes over to you and says, kill this person or I'll kill you, you're allowed to kill the oppressor because they're threatening your life, but you're not allowed to kill an innocent person to save your life. And the reason is, you can't use pikuach nefesh. If the guy says to me, desecrate Shabbos or I'll kill you, I desecrate Shabbos. Yeah? If the guy says, eat chazer or I'll kill you, I eat chazer. Because preserving my life is more important than Shabbos and more important than chazer. If the guy says, worship idols or I'll kill you, I have to give up my life because not worshiping Avodah Zarah is more important. Okay. But by murder, if the guy says to you, murder that person or I'll kill you, you can't say, my pikuach nefesh allows me to murder another person. Because who says the famous phrase that your blood is any better than that person's blood? What do you say? Because I have to preserve my life, I can take your life? Maybe your life is better. They always translate it, who says your blood is sweeter. The word is sumak. Sumak is redder, actually. So the literal translation of the rule is, who says your blood is more redder than his blood? And by the way, what if I say, well, I know I'm better? what if, for example, the guy tells me, kill that drunken, alcoholic, drug addict, or I'll kill you. So, I might be reasonably confident, you might be reasonably confident that, your life is more worthwhile. What if you're the Gadol Hador? What if you're the tzaddik of the generation? Of course, the tzaddik might be so humble that you'll always think, but and that person is like the Russia of the door. It's an amazing thing. You can't make Hashem does not allow you, no matter how obvious it looks to you, and no matter how obvious it may look to everybody, you cannot kill a person to save your life. You can't even kill a person to save 100 lives, 1,000,000 lives. So, question is, why am I allowed to kill the baby, the unborn baby, to save the mother's life? Right? The baby is innocent, so we should let the baby be born. If that kills the mother, that kills the mother. But what is our heter? To kill mother to save baby. Right? The rule should be, this is the halachic rule, ein dochin nefesh mipnei nefesh. We don't destroy one life to save another life because we're not allowed to say whose life is better. We have to let nature take its course, so to speak. Let Hashem decide. So there are two reasons the Rishonim give why the mother's life has precedence over the baby's life. One reason is given by Rashi, and one reason is given by the Rambam. Rashi says, it's true that you can't take a life to save a life, because you can't judge that your life is better than their life. But a fetus is not yet, this goes back to what we said before, a fetus is not yet a full life. It hasn't been born yet. It's only a potential life. So even though we say you can't kill a life to save a life. But if something is not yet a life, it is only a potential, the actual life has preference over the potential life. And that's why the mother's life has preference, because the unborn fetus, even at 9 months, is not yet a nefesh gamur. It is not yet a complete life. That's what Rashi says. Rambam gives another reason. Rambam says, if the mother's life is endangered because of the baby, right, whatever it is, the baby is putting a strain on her heart, or whatever the health reason is, the baby now becomes a rodef, and the baby can be killed as a rodef. Now that's a very amazing thing. When you think of rodef, you normally think of bad people. You think of malevolent actors. You think of, terrorists. You think of robbers, people who take hostages. But the truth is, the law of rodef is not limited to bad actors. The law of rodef applies to anybody whose life is a threat to me. So a person could be a rodef. And I'll give you a few examples. Let's imagine, God forbid, that you had a 2-year-old who found a loaded gun. Let's say the person keeps a loaded gun. I mean, obviously you got to be careful not to give access to your children, but the person had a loaded gun. His 2-year-old brings it to the table and starts swinging around the gun. The gun could go off any second and kill somebody. Now, obviously, the first thing you do is not kill the child. I mean, even a real rodef, if you can disable a terrorist without killing them, you have to try to do that. But let's imagine that the only way you can prevent somebody from getting shot is by God forbid, killing the baby. You're allowed to kill the baby as a rodef. The baby is a rodef. Or you may have heard this story in the Holocaust of Jews that were hiding in a bunker, and the Germans were searching the house, and they would find the Jews if they would kill them. And one of the people hiding had a baby with them, and the baby started crying. And the story goes that the mother put a blanket over the baby's mouth to muffle the sound, and tragically the baby suffocated. And that was an accident. That's an awful story. But I want to make it a more awful story. It could very well be la halacha, they would be allowed to actually kill the baby. God forbid, kill the baby. Because if the baby's cries are going to give away their whereabouts and result in all of them getting killed by the Nazis, the baby's crying is a rodef. The baby's a rodef. So rodef, I'm showing you, is not limited to bad people. It's not limited to intentionally wanting to harm somebody. It can apply to babies. And the Rambam is teaching us it can even apply to unborn children, that an unborn child might halachically be a rodef. And that is why you're allowed to kill the baby that's endangering the mother. So you understand the two opinions here. We have Machlokes, Rashi, and the Rambam. Right? Everybody says the halacha is if the mother's life is in danger, you can abort the baby, kill the baby. Machlokes is why? Because l'chara you don't kill one person to save another. So Rashi's reason is because the unborn baby is not a complete person yet. The Rambam's reason is because the baby that's endangering the mother's life, even though it's not doing it with bad intention, is halachically a rodef, and a rodef may be killed if there's no other way to prevent the innocent person from being harmed. Yeah.
If someone is trying to kill you, you have to try to disable them without killing them?
Yes. But you don't have to be too strict, meaning to say, in these types of cases, if you try to take your time, you're putting yourself in danger. But assuming that you can do so, in fact, usually if you're the actual person who's being threatened, usually, you have to kill him. But if you're talking about people who are like snipers, professional snipers, and they could aim, and they have the time. They should aim for the leg or aim for something that would disable them. In fact, once the terrorist is disabled, you cannot kill him. In fact, this was the famous court-martial we had in Israel, was it a few years ago? It was on YouTube. Everything is on video today, where a terrorist was caught and tied down.
Where is this?
In Israel. It happened in Israel. And on YouTube, there was actually a video of a soldier, a terrorist on the ground. The soldier just walked over to the terrorist, put a gun to his head,
And shot it.
and killed him. Now, the soldier was then put up for a court-martial, etc., for a murder. Now, the soldier claimed that the terrorist was reaching for a gun, which would have changed everything. So I can't speak about is the soldier innocent or guilty, because if the terrorist was reaching for a gun, then he's still an active rodef and he can be killed.
But what if he could have stopped him by stepping on his hand?
Right. Yeah, but so the general principle is, though, there is a general principle that if you can stop a rodef who's trying to kill you or other people in a manner that is short of actually killing them, you are obligated halachically to use less extreme means. And that also means, therefore, that once a terrorist is disabled, he's in a prison cell, or he's tied up, or he's under custody control, you're not allowed to kill him. At that point, the only people who could kill him would be a court or a beis din that would paskin that he's chayav misa. In other words, rodef is not about punishment. This is critical. The law of rodef is not punishing people for the bad things they did. It's to prevent them from further harm. So once the rodef did his action, and you got him, the issue is punishment. Punishment has to be through a court or a beis din. It cannot be through private people. A private person could try to prevent the murders, but he cannot punish murders that already happened. Yeah.
Nowadays, when we don't have the Sanhedrin, so we can't put people to death according to the terror, does that, how would it apply to the Israeli government?
Yeah, so this is a fascinating question generally, meaning it's true that we don't have a Sanhedrin, and therefore the laws of death penalty for Shabbos and for adultery and for Avodah Zarah, none of this can apply today. So here's the question. According to halacha, does a secular court, whether it's an Israeli court or an American court, does it have the right to impose capital punishment? Right? So this is an interesting issue. The Chassam Sofer actually paskins that bisman hazeh, in the absence of a Sanhedrin, there is no court that has the right to impose capital punishment. So capital punishment cannot be imposed. But Rav Yaakov Emden argues. Rav Yaakov Emden says the following, and listen to this. Rav Yaakov Emden says that there is, under the Sheva mitzvahs of Noach, a mitzvah called dinim. This is the seventh one. And dinim means to establish a court system that will punish actions that are destructive to society. And Rav Yaakov Emden understands that under the Noachide Code, a society can even impose death penalties for violent actions like murder and the like. And Rav Yaakov Emden suggests that even a Jewish court would be able to do so, acting under the Noachide laws, meaning Jewish courts can borrow from Noachide authority. So according to Rav Yaakov Emden, the state of Israel would have the right. Now I'm not saying it's right or wrong, that's a separate debate, but they would have the right to impose death penalties for violent crimes like murder or terrorism.
I'm a little confused by the reasoning. Why is there disagreement?
Well,
Why is there one opinion that yes, you can and one
well, the reason why there's disagreement is this. The Torah has all sorts of conditions for a death penalty, and these conditions
Isn't
largely...
that only for Sanhedrin?
Yeah, it's a Sanhedrin, that's what I'm saying. So the question is, the Torah says you need a Sanhedrin, a special type of court, special ordination, special witnesses, eyewitnesses. Now,
But
we don't...
the rest of the world didn't have Sanhedrin.
I understand. The rest of the world does what the rest of the world wants to do, but the question is, what does Judaism say the rest of the world is supposed to do? That's the question. I mean, they'll do what they do anyway. But what does Judaism say that they're supposed to do. So, since the rest of the world is governed by, I have to clarify something. Since the rest of the world is governed by Noahide law, under Noahide law, capital punishment does not require all of these different issues. You don't need eyewitnesses. You can use circumstantial evidence. You don't need warning, etc. Yeah, I need to step back a little bit. I misstated something. So vis-a-vis non-Jews, there is no question that the Noahide code will allow capital punishment. That's not a machlokas. The machlokas, I misstated. The machlokas, the Chassam Sofer and Rabbi Yaakov Emden, is whether the Noahide law would give them power over Jewish people. That's the machlokas. The Chassam Sofer is saying that a non-Jewish court does not have capital punishment authority over a Jew.
Well, why would they treat a Jew any differently?
Well, they won't. But the Chassam, I mean, you're right. I mean, the Goyim aren't asking this question, but the issue is, now let me tell you the exact issue of the Chassam Sofer. The issue would be this. A Jew was arrested and sentenced to die. I am able to bribe the jailer to let him go. Is it permitted for me to bribe the jailer to get him out of jail, to save him from a death sentence? So here's what the Chassam Sofer says. Since in the eyes of halacha, the non-Jewish court had no authority to impose death on a Jew, it is not a halachically valid death sentence. If it's not a halachically valid death sentence, I'm allowed to bribe the jailer to let him out.
But I thought we just said that they did.
No, that's the Chassam Sofer.
Oh.
I mentioned two views. Rabbi Yaakov Emden says that under the Noahide code, God gives the Noahide system jurisdiction over all people in their realm, both Jews and non-Jews, and therefore the death sentence is a valid sentence, and therefore you would not be allowed to circumvent it.
Who says that?
Rav Yaakov Emden.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want to be clear. This is a machlokas regarding the jurisdiction, the halachic jurisdiction of non-Jewish courts over Jews. It's a halachic question. But the halachic jurisdiction of non-Jewish courts over non-Jews is 100% valid. Therefore, a Noahide court, meaning a court of a non-Jewish society, would clearly be allowed to impose a death penalty on non-Jewish terrorists and murderers. And then the question will become, well, okay, but what about a Jewish court? So the question is, can a Jewish court function, even though it's not a Sanhedrin, can it function under the umbrella of B'nai Noach law, get a machlokas? Now again, I know this may sound a little abstract because obviously non-Jewish societies are not asking questions of rabbis. What can they do and what they can't do? So I appreciate it's theoretical, but it is an interesting question to ask. How does the Torah envision the authority of non-Jewish courts to preserve society? And can a Jewish court borrow from that non-Jewish society? Okay. How do we get onto this? I don't remember. Anyone remind me?
Well, we're talking about
Yeah, road days.
abortion and road days, yeah.
The what?
We're talking about road day.
Oh, Rodef. Yeah, right, okay. So that's what I'm saying. So, Rodef is not vigilanteism. It's very important to understand the difference. I, as an individual, cannot kill a terrorist because he murdered 10 children. He has to go to court, and then the court would have the authority under the Noahide.
A Jewish court would have the authority?
Well, that's what I'm saying. In other words, many would say a Jewish court could borrow the Noahide authority. In other words,
But some people disagree.
some people disagree. But Rodef for sure does not help, okay? It's very important. Rodef is not a vigilante mechanism of punishing individual people for bad things that they did. Rodef, in fact, is not a punishment idea at all. Rodef is a preventative idea. Rodef says, I can kill, if necessary, to prevent a murder from taking place. And since it is preventative, you only can use murder if that's the only way you could prevent it. If you could prevent it in some other way, you got to prevent it some other way. Because you're not punishing. Maybe the guy deserves to die, but you're not punishing him. You're preventing his harm. And that's why once he's arrested, can't do anything about it. Okay? Now people make the argument, maybe by killing this guy, I'm going to prevent another guy from being a terrorist, but you can't work that way. Rodef is referring to this particular person as being a source of danger. The Chiddush of the Rambam, which is not really it is from the Gemara, but the Chiddush of the Rambam is that Rodef can even apply to an innocent fetus that's not even born, because the fetus is endangering the mother's life. We'll call that the benign rodef, or the benevolent rodef, or the non-malevolent rodef, right? 2-year-old kid, the baby that starts crying, right? That's nichlal, that's included in the principle of rodef, yeah.
In the case of a rodef, how sure do you have to be?
Yeah. That's a very good question. I'll tell you a little story from my own life. It was scary at the time. When I was living in Boston, I was in law school. So I'm walking in the street, and a guy goes over to me. He sticks a gun in my chest. It looked like a gun, and he says, "Give me your money." Yeah, it's pretty scary. Then he starts laughing insanely. And he pulls out, it was like a toy pistol. And he starts laughing, joke. He's lucky I didn't have a gun, because according to the law, and halacha too, if I genuinely thought my life was in danger, and I killed him, and it turned out it was a toy gun, I am off the hook, because the law of rodef, which is halacha, and the law of self-defense, which is the secular term, is not based on an actual danger. It's based on, did you have a reason to perceive that your life was in danger? So the guy.
If it's not reasonable, if you have kind of an extreme reaction.
So you're right. You're right. This is going to be an issue. If you overreact, most of the time, in practical life, juries have a lot of compassion for people in these situations. But if you really, really overreacted by magnifying something way beyond what was the actual case, you might find yourself liable for murder, and halacha would not give you a heter of rodef. So it's a little amorphous. Rodef has to be, I'm going to use vague words, there has to be a reasonable apprehension that your life or someone else's life is in danger. Okay, a reasonable fear that you're in danger, or somebody else. You can also be you can kill somebody who's endangering somebody else. But if it's totally unreasonable, if no normal person would look at this and think this is a dangerous situation, and you overreact and you kill, you might be in trouble. Halachically.
What if there's a terrorist in jail and his sentence is almost over, and he keeps saying how he's going to leave and he's going to.
So there's another issue. There's another issue too, which is really an issue of proximity, meaning to say, let's imagine you have a guy who's a terrorist, and the terrorist says, tomorrow morning at 9:00, you intercepted a telephone call that tomorrow morning at 9:00, I'm going to go to Ben Yehuda Street and shoot somebody. Okay, so the question is, and you obtained that phone message, you heard that phone message. So are you allowed to go to his house in the middle of the night and kill him? So there's another aspect of halacha, that you can only kill the rodef b'shas maisa, meaning when he is actively involved in doing the thing.
In the morning at the time.
So at the morning, right? So at the morning when he shows up and he pulls out his gun, you shoot him. Now I understand you're going to tell me, well, maybe that's a little late, Yeah, okay. But you can't just do it the night before or something like that. So that would be part of the issue there.
You can arrest him.
You can arrest him, yeah, for sure. You can do that, right? So that's a proximity
What
issue.
does B'shas Ma'aseh mean though? Let's say not sleeping. Let's say there's someone who's let's say I know that in certain settlements they'll have an alarm going off. Someone came in, he doesn't not necessarily in the middle of killing someone, but he's running in on these conditions.
Yeah, I think if he's already involved in the action, meaning he's coming into the settlement to kill somebody, you can kill him before he gets to the house. Now again, if you can disable him, I mean, we still have that other rule that if you can disable him without killing him, you got to do that. But you can disable him at that point. You don't have to wait till he actually pulls out the gun. On the other hand, if he hasn't yet left the house, so we do have proximity issues. It has to be proximate to the event. In fact, that's why even in the case of abortion doctor, if all he did was show up at the hospital, okay, you could say as soon as he starts walking to the hospital, that's already eroded, and the like. But that's the Rambam's point about the benign rodef, that the baby, the unborn baby, can be the rodef. And according to the Rambam, this is the heter of why you can kill the baby in order to save the mother. Now, let me ask you,
So, if we're talking about the inaction part of the rodef, and we're talking about Rambam's opinion, and let's say the baby would only kill the mother while giving birth to the baby, then abortion would be allowed before giving birth?
Well, yeah, because the question is how early could you do the abortion? I mean, could I do it if,
But that's also preemptive.
It's preemptive. Yeah, no, that's correct. But that's what rodef is. Rodef is to prevent the baby from killing the mother. We can kill the baby.
Like if it has to be in the act.
The baby's already in the act of
growing.
Yes,
If the danger would only come in giving birth.
So you're saying because the baby is not yet doing anything that's endangering the mother. That's a good question. But
it's in the act of being born.
Just
I mean,
the whole 9 months is one long birth process.
Yeah.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah.
What's Rav Yaakov Emden's, why does he think that the legal court system could administer capital punishment?
Well, because like this, the Torah gives, this is for sure, the Torah for sure gives non-Jewish courts the right to impose the death penalty under the Noachide laws. That's for sure. The question is, does that apply to Jews? Do Noachide laws apply to Jews? Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, since the reason the Torah gives non-Jewish courts the power to impose death penalty is because that's necessary for a stable society, that could apply to any citizen of the society, Jewish or non-Jewish. In other words, the grant of authority would apply even to Jews. Yeah.
If the mother wants the baby to live.
Right. So that's mamish what I was going to say now. That's exactly the question I wanted to raise. So very good that you thought of it. That is, okay, so the halacha is very, very clear. We are allowed to abort the baby in order to save the mother. That's for sure. The question is that sometimes you have a situation where the mother can actually say, I would rather give birth to a baby and die. In fact, I'll give you these are actual tragic cases. Imagine a mother that has advanced cancer, and it is expected, and she's pregnant. She's expected to die in a year. But if the baby is delivered, the stress of delivery would cause her to die much earlier. So her point is this: if you abort the baby, so I'm going to live a year. If you let the baby live, so I'll die in 6 months when the baby gets born, but I'll have a baby in the world. So the mother says, I would rather, lose 6 months of my life and bring a baby into the world than abort the baby and I'm going to die in less than a year anyway. Or even if the mother would live, she might say he wants the baby more. So that's a very, very interesting and tragic type of choice. But many poskim do permit the mother to waive her rights, so to speak, that the mother has the right to go the other way around and say, I would rather die and have my baby delivered. You can call this altruistic volunteering. She can essentially volunteer to give her life so that her baby could live.
According to halacha, she could?
Many opinions say that she could, yeah. Now that wouldn't automatically apply to every case. I mean, this doesn't mean she could commit suicide. And this doesn't mean she could kill herself actively, but at least to say she doesn't want an abortion, so it'll be the process of birth that will kill her. They would allow this. These cases come up. There actually are cases, both in halacha and in general literature, where a woman declined an abortion in order to bring a baby into the world, and she died either in childbirth or she died shortly after childbirth, but that was considered to be halachically mutter. Now, let's go a little further into pikuach nefesh. So the classic case of mother's pikuach nefesh is something physical. She has cancer, or the birth process may induce a stroke or a heart attack, things like that, where physically the stress of a pregnancy or a childbirth on the body can result in her death. What about psychological trauma? What about if she's a perfectly healthy person, she can carry a baby, the baby is not going to endanger her life, but the trauma is so devastating that potentially she might be suicidal, right? She might kill herself because of the stress. Now, the classic example is rape or incest. Let's imagine a woman, God forbid, got pregnant through rape or incest. Now, in the general population, you often hear a pro-lifer say, I am against abortion unless it's rape or incest. Right? That's commonly said. Now, if you think about that, that kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, if you take the position that the fetus is a human being, then you shouldn't be able, I mean, can you kill a baby? Let's say a baby is born, and someone will say, oh, I'm going to kill this 2-year-old because it's so traumatic, rape or incest, you're not going to kill a baby that way. So here's what halacha says. Halacha does not have something called a rape or incest exception. But halacha does have a pikuach nefesh exception. And halacha recognizes that in some cases, it may be so psychologically devastating for a woman to have to carry a baby that she conceived by rape or incest, that it's a life-threatening pregnancy if she would be forced to continue. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all. This is not saying every case of rape or incest is going to be that case. But it will say that some cases might qualify as pikuach nefesh. It depends on the woman. It depends on her resources. It depends on are there adequate therapists that can help her. It depends on her understanding the options. There is here in Israel, also in the United States as well, agencies that will help women place these children for adoption if they can't, if it's too traumatic for them to raise the baby, if they don't have the resources. There's an organization in America called In Shifra's Arms that does a lot of good work in that. And here in Israel, there's an organization called Efrat, same as the city, but it's not the city, Efrat, which really helps women either keep their babies if they want or give up the babies for adoption. It's a funny thing. It's a little bizarre a little bit. Sometimes when women are traumatized by unwanted pregnancies, and this is a serious problem. I don't mean to make light of it. It is a serious issue. And they say they have to get an abortion. They can't possibly live with having a baby. They're single, whatever it is. So we bring up the idea of adoption. You can place the baby for adoption. And often the woman will say, there's no way I will give my baby up for adoption. So, therefore what? There's no way I'll give my baby up for adoption, therefore I'm going to get an abortion. Giving up a baby for adoption is a lot better than aborting the baby. I mean, adoption, the baby has a home, the baby has a life. And yet, people will often say they would rather abort than give their baby up for adoption. So it's a strange world in that particular way. People say adoption is actually an act of love. You're giving a child a home, etc. But again, as I say, it's I don't mean to make light. I mean, obviously, when people are traumatized, it can be life-threatening, and when it is life-threatening, halacha will allow pikuach nefesh to be considered. And I think I had mentioned at the very beginning that if it's within 40 days and it's a rape or incest, will often be lenient in that particular way. Okay, so it is important that psychological trauma is considered to be a valid basis. So we talked about early abortion, we talked about mother's life in danger, we talked about psychological trauma. Let's now talk about birth defects. Again, not the happiest topic today. God forbid, again, a woman is pregnant And through amniocentesis or other types of testing, she discovers that the baby has a serious genetic condition, maybe cleft palate, it may be Down syndrome, maybe Tay-Sachs. Now, obviously, these are all tremendously different from each other. That's the point. You don't lump together a category, genetic problem. Okay? So, generally speaking, genetic abnormality alone is not a justification for abortion. Certainly first of all, some things are correctable. Cleft palate, for example. Cleft palate is a serious condition that requires surgical interventions. So it's no picnic, but it is a correctable condition. It's a manageable condition. So things that are correctable, you certainly cannot go with abortion. Now, what about Down syndrome? Now, Down syndrome is not correctable. And again, I'm not minimizing maybe the challenges of raising a Down syndrome baby. But there's generally no reason to justify the abortion of a Down syndrome baby. Down syndrome children grow up, they can live a long time. They can be reasonably happy. In fact, for Carrot, many say, maybe it's a stereotype, but say that the personality tends to be very happy, very giving, very kind, and they can be productive, and there's a whole range of functioning, higher functioning, lower functioning. So to abort a Down syndrome would be no justification at all. But where you get into a real difficulty is a genetic condition like Tay-Sachs. Tay-Sachs is a hard one because Tay-Sachs, number one, there's a tremendous amount of suffering that the child does go through. Loss of function, blindness, deafness, difficulty breathing. So number one, there's suffering. Number two, there's no cure right now. That's not to consider. Number three, it's a relatively short life expectancy, death before the age of 8 or 9, typically. So this is not like a Down syndrome, which is just, it's a disability, but a person can have a nice, happy life. This is not cleft palate that is surgically correctable. This is an uncorrectable condition of great pain and suffering. So here, there is one opinion, a minority opinion, the Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer of Oldenburg, who actually says, in light of the great pain and suffering that the child will go through, he does permit abortion of a Tay-Sachs fetus until the last trimester, meaning up until the end of 6 months, which is quite amazing. He does permit Tay-Sachs abortions, or he's not alive anymore, he did permit Tay-Sachs abortions, but I have to say that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said that this is a sinful psak. He actually used very strong language. He said God will have to forgive Rav Oldenburg for permitting such a thing. And I believe that most opinions will not permit, even, God forbid, a Tay-Sachs abortion. And that's why Rav Moshe even says that amniocentesis for these birth defects shouldn't even be undertaken, because what's the purpose? What are you trying to find out? In the secular world, you find out because you make abortion decisions. But if halakha doesn't allow an abortion, maybe it's better not to know. And the reason why it's better not to know is because until you know, and this is a mystical idea, once you know something, God is not going to change it. God is not going to do open miracles. Until you know, Hashem might manipulate things. That's why we say in Israel, never check your bank account. If I don't know, maybe Hashem will put in some extra money here and there. Once I know I got nothing there, nothing's going to, it's not going to come in, right? But there actually is a principle like this, that until you know about something, it's shayach to be changed. Once you know, if it would require a supernatural miracle, we're not allowed to assume Hashem is going to do supernatural. Hashem can do it sometimes, but generally speaking, you don't make the assumption. Now, this is not true on a correctable thing, meaning you can't just say, I'm not going to test for cancer because until I know, maybe God will do a miracle. No. If it's something that can be fixed, corrected, treated, You are not allowed to close your eyes to it. That's very, very clear. You got to get tests, you got to get a mammogram, whatever it would be. But this is referring to something that if you find out about it, there's nothing you can do about it. So there is a logic in halacha that something I'm not able to do anything about, maybe it's better not to know. Do you see the difference? That which I'm able to do something about, I have a chiyuv, an obligation, to make my ishtadlus. Yeah.
I want to let you know, but I have just a clarifying question. Is like, there's some of these things where like you can't technically do anything about it, but like you knowing might give you time to prepare, such as either like getting support from other people who have dealt with Tay-Sachs, or even like having a Down syndrome child. Like, it could give you more time to look at schools, look at like ways that you might want to like learn more about parenting in a way that you hadn't been planning for.
I think that's a very legitimate point. You are correct, and I would agree with you. And that is, if I'm not getting the advanced information for an abortion decision, but I'm getting it to be able to be a better parent and to improve my situation and to give me the psychological resources of preparing myself for a potentially stressful life, I believe that would justify getting that knowledge. Yes.
You can't necessarily choose which one, like what information you get, right? If you're you can choose, but you gotta have a reason. Meaning when you're asked, attention matters.
Right. That's correct. When you're asked, should we test for this? Should we test for that? Should we test for that? You need to ask yourself, what benefit will I get from this information, and what detriment do I have if I don't know? Okay, and that's always going to be the central question. That's the issue with Dor Yesharim, right? I think we talked about Dor Yesharim. Dor Yesharim is the genetic testing service, and Dor Yesharim started for Tay-Sachs because how does it work? Ashkenazi Jewish genetic disease. If both parents are carriers, there's a 1 in 4 chance that a child will have this disease. If only one parent is a carrier, there's no chance. You need 2 parents to be carriers. So Dor Yesharim starts, I don't know if any of you have done Dor Yesharim, whatever it is. So you go to Dor Yesharim, they do testing, and if both of you are carriers, it'll give you a notification that this shidduch is not compatible. If one of you is a carrier, they don't tell you which one, but they just say compatible shidduch, or whatever. I mean, today everybody can get their own test, so you could find out. But when Dor Yesharim started, genetic tests were not so available to everybody. So this idea that they kept results, secret, today it's almost worthless because anybody can do their own tests very, very cheap. But still, technically, Dor Yesharim does not reveal. Now, it started with Tay-Sachs, but now it has all sorts of other conditions, some of which aren't even tremendously serious. And some people say that you shouldn't test for things that are not as serious as Tay-Sachs. Yeah.
Can I ask 2 questions quickly? Would that opinion about Tay-Sachs, would that have also applied to cystic fibrosis, for example?
Yes. Cystic fibrosis is very similar to Tay-Sachs, although I believe the life expectancy can be much longer. Now, let me just point out that Rav Moshe's point that you don't do abortion. Remember, Moshe's saying you don't do abortions for any of these things. The truth of the matter is, in secular society, people are doing abortions for sicknesses that have a latency period of maybe 30 or 40 years. I mean, they have, that's just, what's the other one? Multiple sclerosis. Now, we can do genetic screening for multiple sclerosis at a very, before the baby is born. You can do amniocentesis for multiple sclerosis, but multiple sclerosis doesn't hit a person till, let's say, their 40s or 50s. So what are you going to do? You're going to abort a baby because in 50 years, they may get MS. Well, what about the 50 years of life without MS? What about the fact that in 50 years, how are you going to feel, if the mom is still alive after 50 years and they discover some guy gets a Nobel Prize for finding the cure for multiple sclerosis? Oh, gee, I shouldn't have aborted that baby 50 years ago. So Tay-Sachs, okay, even with Tay-Sachs there could be refuah, but still it's a very short-term life. But to abort based on long-term illnesses that may take many, many years to become manifest is kind of a very, very foolish decision. Yeah.
Just and as a follow-up with that, like I'm thinking about that opinion about the abortion before the third trimester.
Yeah,
Is this based
for
on the
Tay-Sachs.
assumption that the
Yeah.
baby's already suffering before it's even born?
No, his base, well, I don't think he says that. He says that the suffering will be after birth, but he says he's really going with a viability. That since before the third trimester, the fetus cannot survive outside of the womb, so it's not a full human being, and therefore we could be makel, as opposed to afterwards, it's closer to infanticide, murdering a baby, which you obviously cannot murder a baby that's suffering Tay-Sachs and the like. That's mercy killing. Okay, so that's kind of the issue. Now, the final thing I want to mention. I'm sorry. Yeah.
About testing with like different intentions.
Yeah.
Like your question. Is there room to say like you shouldn't test at all for these things? Because there have been times where the tests came out. Like I know personally people who like were told that they're gonna have a Down syndrome child, and the child in the end was not and was totally healthy. So there are times where it just causes unnecessary stress.
No, so again, here's the point. If it's something that if a problem is uncovered, they could fix by surgery or whatever it is, then I think you have to test for it. But if you're talking about problems that you can't do anything for, so really it depends on your reaction, meaning to say, the question that was asked was, if I know the information, I could prepare myself better. That's one paradigm. Your paradigm is, if I know this information, I'm going to go crazy. It's easier for me to have bitachon. So it depends on the person. Meaning, for some people, if they're calmer and just saying Hashem will take care of me, that's a higher madrega. That's a good madrega. But if some people are nervous and worried and scared, and this would at least either reassure them or at least put them in a mode where they're able to prepare themselves, even if Baruch Hashem it doesn't happen, then it would be good. So it very much depends on the individual. I'm not going to say it's usher, and I'm not going to say it's something you have to do. But different people will respond in different ways. The question you always ask yourself is there a benefit for me to know this, or am I better off not knowing this? And each person's personality is different. So the final issue I want to raise is an interesting issue, and you could debate this a lot. Let's go back to the Supreme Court leak, right? So the draft opinion, which is only a draft, by Justice Samuel Alito, throws out the famous or the infamous case of Roe versus Wade. Now, I'm going to talk to you as a lawyer for a few moments. What does it mean to throw out Roe versus Wade? So again, you have to understand this. Roe versus Wade said that a woman has an absolute right to an abortion. It's a constitutional right. That means no state can prohibit abortion, at least in the early trimesters. Now, Roe versus...
What are the specifications?
Say again?
No woman can be denied abortion rights for when?
Well, at least for the first trimester. And second trimester is more limited, but still there's rights even then. Now, if assuming the Supreme Court gets rid of Roe versus Wade, that doesn't mean abortion will be allowed. You sure you understand that?
Well,
I'm sorry. It doesn't mean abortion will be forbidden. It means Roe versus Wade says abortion has to be permitted. That's Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. If you get rid of Roe versus Wade, that doesn't mean abortion is forbidden. It means each state in the United States can make its own decision. Getting rid of Roe versus Wade means it is now up to 50 states to make their own decision. So you can rest assured that liberal states, like New York, in spite of Hasidim in New York is a liberal state, California, are going to allow abortion. Even Roe versus Wade, getting rid of Roe is not going to change the law in California at all. They're going to allow abortion. In fact, it could very well be, possibly, most of the United States will still allow abortion. Where you're going to see a change in the law is in southern, very Christian states, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, those types of states. Once you knock out Roe versus Wade, they're going to pass laws that say abortion is not allowed.
What were their laws before?
Well, in some of the cases.
Well,
there was
since Roe versus Wade,
Right, but before Roe.
yeah, they prohibited abortion, sure.
Completely? I'm
Yeah.
saying, what about danger to mother?
Well, most laws did permit it if it's danger to the mother's life. It was very. I'm not aware of any abortion law that ever said even if the mother's life is in danger. In other words, that's all.
According to what we learned about the Seven Noahide laws, that would.
So that would be good.
Right thing.
That would be the right thing. That's correct. So here's my question. Let's imagine Roe versus Wade is out of the picture. It gets overruled, as this draft opinion said. It's going to get overruled, you know, and it'll probably come down in June, maybe another month, another 2 months, or whatever it will be. So I'm in a state now, and we're debating: should we pass a law that allows abortion, or should we pass a law that says all abortion is not allowed unless the mother's life is in danger? I'm an Orthodox Jew. Either I vote for the law, you know, or I vote for candidates who take a different position. What should my position be as a religious Jew as to what abortion law a state should follow? Now, I think the intuitive thing you would answer is, well, gee, if halacha says abortion is not allowed unless the mother's life is in danger, then I ought to support a law that says abortion is not allowed unless the mother's life is in danger, because that's exactly what the halacha is. So it would seem to be the case that whatever my halachic understanding is should be the law that I want to be passed. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's, I think, the simple thing you'd say. But I want to introduce an idea that may go the other way. And that is, it may be better for a Torah Jew for the government to allow abortion rather than limit abortion. I'll tell you why. When we have a halacha that says abortion is permitted only when the mother's life is in danger, who determines if the mother's life is pikuach nefesh, is in danger? This is a halachic question. It's determined by a rav and a psychologist and a doctor, right? Now, if you have a secular law that says abortion is forbidden unless the mother's life is in danger, let's say the rav paskins that the mother's life is in danger, but the prosecuting attorney doesn't agree. Since it is a secular law at this point, that actually means a woman might be prosecuted for following halakha. And I hope you're following me. Meaning, if the state matters, I don't want to use Hebrew to confuse it. If the state permits abortion totally, so then I, as a frum Jewish woman, follows halacha, she's going to be safe. If she doesn't get an abortion, she's okay. And if she gets an abortion, I'll be psak, she's going to be okay. The state cannot prosecute her. But once you take even a halacha and you make it into a secular law, it's out of the hands of rabbanim and poskim, and it now gets interpreted by secular authorities. So paradoxically, this is a paradox, paradoxically, even if I'm against abortion, unless the mother's life is in danger, I might be in favor of a secular law that lets women make whatever decisions they want to make. Because that way, that maximizes my ability, or a woman's ability, to keep halacha. But as I say, I think that's a controversial thought, but it might be something to
But we
think
also
about.
have, I mean, I'm sure that the people who decide if it's dangerous for your life, like doctors and psychologists, we have them in the frum community also, and I'm sure there are frum ones who would go to what the Rav says.
No, that's correct. I mean, listen, people have said, maybe this is theoretical, but they have said, listen, if you have a doctor, you have a psychologist who says the mother's life is in danger, it's very unlikely, like you're spinning hypotheticals, that the district attorney is going to say, oh, it's not the mother's life is not in danger.
Yeah.
So the whole problem might be a made-up problem. Yeah, I'm asking, but in theory, it's a problem. In theory, it is a problem, even though it may not be a real problem. I
Your
agree.
experience,
Yeah.
do doctors generally take like because we talked about physical well-being. Sometimes it's a little more obvious, but more like psychological trauma. I'm not sure if secular doctors always take that into account, at least for abortion, in the same way that a Rav might be able to assess.
Well, I think they would. Maybe not a regular MD, but certainly a psychiatrist looks into this very much so.
No, I've never heard, and maybe I'm just not educated on this, but I've never heard of a psychologist giving permission for an abortion. I didn't realize they could do that.
I see the danger in it, but I'm assuming that the clause would be that if a doctor or a psychologist says that
you're probably right. Maybe I'm spinning what do you call law professor hypotheticals.
Like how else do they decide?
You're correct.
You want a culture that
in a reasonable world. They're not going to be second guessing what a doctor said or the like in terms of psychological. I think you're right.
The difference is, do you want to trust your Rav fully, or do you want to put your trust in the secular doctors? And maybe it's reasonable.
Yeah, but the Rav himself is going to consult with doctors. By the way, let me just end with the story. I think I told you the story before, but it's an interesting story, a tragic story, a happy story. It's a combination of a lot of things about a religious high school girl who got raped by, let's say it's a black man. There's a reason why I mentioned a black man, because of the way the children look. And you can imagine how tremendously, terribly distraught she was. And they discovered she was pregnant and carrying twins. And she literally wanted to commit suicide. She wanted to kill herself. And of course, Pikuach Nefesh would allow abortion, but they met with Rav Moshe Feinstein. And Rav Moshe Feinstein spoke to her for many hours, and he told her something that may sound very, very shocking. He told her, the children you're carrying are Jewish. They are Jewish. They are Jewish children. And why Hashem brought these neshamas into the world in this awful, awful way, he says, we don't know. But if they are Jewish children, you could raise them to be tzaddikim and Talmidei Chachamim. And the story goes, now maybe these are made up stories sometimes, you never know, Maisim are Maisim, but the story goes that he convinced her, she was suicidal, and he convinced her that she could see this as something Hashem is giving her, some challenge Hashem is giving her. And the story goes, I don't know if she ever did get married, but she raised these two boys. They came out looking like they were black children. And she raised them to be Talmidei Chachamim, and both of them are like Talmidei Chachamim today, and the like. So Rav Moshe's point was that from the greatest, darkest challenges of life, there can still be wonderful outcomes. But not everybody is tough enough for that, strong enough for that, and not everybody is like Rav Moshe that could convince somebody in a loving way. So halacha would allow abortion, but still, if you can get over the challenges and take them on, it might be worthwhile. Okay, so that's kind of what you need to know about abortion. Okay, all right. B'ez Hashem, you should have a good week, everybody, and Hashem should protect Am Yisrael. I know we did have some. I don't know if your talk was about the events that just happened, but the terrorism in Elad and other places, and it's very, very difficult. You see, that's when the great tzaddikim leave the world. We become, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael becomes more vulnerable. So, B'ez Hashem, we should be zocheh to the Geula Shlema B'Karev.